Good evening, everybody. My name is Pat Hernley. I'm going to be moderating this first discussion panel. The title of this panel is Making Money in Today and Tomorrow's Music Industry. The music industry is constantly changing, and so are the various ways of monetizing your music. In this topic, we're going to discuss the opportunities for making money in today and tomorrow's industry through avenues such as digital monetization, licensing, and live performances. So, I'd like to begin by introducing our panelists. We have, of course, Jorge Brea, who you just met. We have Matt Adell, and we have Phil Benito. So we're pleased to be here and do this panel for you guys. So Jorge, can you please describe what are some of the key methods of making money for music in a digital era?
All right, so one of the first areas is obviously distribution. It's what we do as a core business, but it's one of the quickest, easiest ways to kind of get into the music industry from a digital perspective. So if you're an artist and you have original music, and always ensure that it's original music, and you can go ahead and sign up with a company like ourselves to get your music onto iTunes, Spotify, etc. There's a big shift that's occurring in the music industry. It's been occurring for the past few years, where downloads actually took over physical, but now even downloads are sort of like the new physical. So streaming is beginning to be a very big growth opportunity for artists. It's also a way for artists to really get noticed without having to spend a lot. So that's one of the first big areas from a digital perspective where an artist can make revenue. It's not a tremendously huge amount when you're first getting in there, and I want to talk to all the new artists and producers that are out there right now that if you're not in the music industry, you don't have anything out there, come into it with a very level-headed perspective and understand that it may take time, but if you truly work hard, then you can get some solid results. So,
Matt, you're the founder of Metapop, the only platform in the world exclusively dedicated to remixes. What are some of the challenges that you noticed the marketplace was missing, and why were you compelled to create Metapop? Can you explain how it all works?
I will. I'll try to do it briefly. I also want to give you guys some context about who I am and why I'm here so that you can sort of process any opinion I might have, and they're all just opinions. I flew in today from Los Angeles. I left my house in Silver Lake in Los Angeles at 4 a.m. to be here today because I'm such a fan of Jorge and Symphonic. And so I urge anybody who doesn't know a lot about Symphonic to take some time to figure that out today. And my background is I was, before the company I have now, which is a new startup that I'm going to tell you about, I was the CEO of a company called Beatport, which is the world's largest seller of dance music in the world. Prior to that, I was at legal Napster, after Napster went legit. I've worked at Amazon, I've worked at Music Now, I worked in house music in the 80s and 90s in Chicago when that meant actually putting records in boxes and shipping them out of my apartment. Thank you. And my new company is focused on helping labels and artists and producers make money when people are doing bootleg or unauthorized remixing. Is everyone familiar with like listening to bootleg remixes online? Those don't generally, well, many of them get taken down, which is a bummer for the people who make them, you know, to spend your weekend or a week making a remix that you're really proud of, putting it up on SoundCloud, having it taken down, or worst case scenario, having a lawyer threaten to sue you. And even when they're left up, there's no money being generated properly from most of those remixes. And so we're a back-end system that manages all those rights. We've partnered with Symphonic. Anybody who uses Symphonic can sign up for our service through Symphonic. And we help people make money and reach new fans through what we call fan remixing. And we've signed 6,000 labels so far since March. We've distributed over 7,000 remixes. That were formerly bootleg remixes and are now authentic and making money for everyone in the ecosystem. It's an exciting time. I do want to, one of the things I'm really excited about telling everybody right now is the numbers are out for the last quarter in the music business, and for the first time since the 90s, revenue is up year over year. So the entire business has been shrinking nonstop since the 90s, and this quarter is the first time things have started to go in the right direction. So I'm optimistic for everyone. I think it's a great time for everyone to be here.
Phil, in today's industry, a huge percentage of an artist's revenue is from live performances and touring. What are some steps that independent artists can take in order for them to be ready to pursue gigs? And what are some crucial things festival programmers want to know before you submit for performances?
You want to have basically all your stuff together. I mean, obviously an EPK and all that stuff's great. You know, festivals especially, live video, like a solid live video with great sound is really the most important thing that shows what is going to be presented on stage while you're there. Not necessarily spending money on an official video or anything like that. I mean, that's great to build, you know, some sort of fan base or get some recognition online, but the most important thing for me is always live video. And then from that point forward, you know, kind of what you're worth within the market, what your market history is. You know, having that, you know, super clean official press kit's not going to necessarily get you the gig or the slot as much as, you know, the music selling itself. So I always, you know, and listening to something, I mean, having a solid sound quality I think is the most important thing. And there's always other revenue streams you can develop, from merch to, you know, your actual music itself and selling it. The CDs obviously don't sell very much anymore, and I think that's, you know, Jorge's business and Symphonic is kind of stepped in and helped fill a void there, just for an everyday band or a younger artist to be able to, you know, put their art on a platform that's accessible globally. But as far as getting the gigs and making those connections, I mean, Facebook makes it a little easier to connect with people that you may not know. If you have a friend of a friend that knows somebody, who's always, you know, get some sort of an official referral or kind of lead in more than just a blind email or a blind message always helps also.
Do you find some interrelationship between when emerging artists might, you know, seek out the streaming platform for the direct revenues from that, and some complement with how that may play a role in them applying toward festivals, for example?
It can. I mean, those numbers, you know, your Spotify plays and, you know, even your social media following, I mean, all that comes into play when assessing kind of what an artist is worth, you know, and how many tickets could be assumed that, you know, you're going to sell. I mean, in the festival setting, a younger artist isn't going to be necessarily expected to sell tickets themselves, but it's more of a platform to get recognized, I guess. And even as much as you can do in that part leading up to that festival also, as far as promoting it yourself and promoting your own set, goes a long way, I think, kind of down the road, you know, as other festivals see it and other events and promoters kind of see you pushing it.
Jorge, I have a couple of related questions here for you. First off, how have streaming services changed the landscape for the independent scene and how fans consume music?
Well, I think the streaming services have been great for the consumer. I think a lot of artists sometimes they might feel a little bit threatened by them in terms of the fact that, you know, they're not going to be making as much off downloads and off physical. But the reality is streaming is kind of here, and it's going to continue to grow and be here. What I think it has done is it's made it much more accessible. I mean, as these platforms grow, they're getting into different territories. So, you know, when you have an artist from Tampa or Chicago or wherever they may be, somebody in Japan could start to go ahead and really enjoy their music as well. So I think the streaming companies, in fact, actually, we're seeing higher payouts on the streaming companies now than we ever have from a download perspective. So I think it's just easier for fans to consume the music, get familiarized with an artist, follow the artist, and then believing them. But one of the more important things that I think helps out in the live touring things as well is that, you know, like Phil mentioned, an EPK, things are important, But you want to also be consistent. So if you just put out one song on a streaming platform, that's great. But you really want to consistently put out, solid quality content out there. And if you can do that, and if you have a focus of just streaming, then you're going to have some interesting opportunities, I think, arise. And using platforms like Metapop, even getting into different sorts of streaming methods out there is really going to be solid for you as an artist, because you're starting to think in the future of what's happening next, not what used to happen. So,
what are some of the other opportunities? I guess I'm thinking about when you and Jeanette came out. They came out and did a great professional development workshop presentation for us at SPC. One of the great things you guys talked about when you were out there was some of the other benefits of the streaming platform for emerging artists, beyond just whatever revenues may come from consumption by the consumer. You spoke that day in terms of having your music considered in different entertainment platforms, different media platforms. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of music supervisors, for example, when they're shopping for sync licensing, they're going to be going on Spotify playlists. So not only having your music just on Spotify for the streaming purposes, but having it out there and maybe networking with some of the people that control playlists and things like that, or working with us to pitch your material for playlists is definitely an area that can become much more beneficial, because these music supervisors are going to go in there and see what's hot, what's new, and that's always what they want, is what is hot and new, right? If they can work with a new artist, they know it's going to be a little bit more cost effective than someone that's established. I think, Matt, you could probably add to some of these things in terms of benefits as well from a streaming perspective, just because you've seen even the download model and so forth as well.
Yeah, I've said this spiel before. I think you've heard this, but one of the things I love about the streaming market as opposed to the physical market, and I grew up working in record stores. I love record stores. But when I worked at a record store, my job was to get you to buy the Smash Mouth CD. I didn't give a shit if you liked it. Seriously. And the goal was to get people to buy things. And people bought a lot of music that they then put on a shelf and never listened to. And the exciting thing about streaming is you can only have a hit if people love your record. It's no longer about tricking someone into buying a $16 product because there's one great song out of 13. That's great for consumers, obviously, but it's actually also great for the artists, because you know that if you get 5,000 plays on Spotify, or 10,000, or 1 million, that those are people who love what you do, not people who walk by a sales bin at Best Buy, and your CD was discounted, and so that direct connection of really understanding, not that people bought your product, but that people are listening to your music, is what's incredibly valuable right now in terms of really understanding your audience. And I urge people, who's a DJ? Who's ever DJ'd here? Have you ever DJ'd an entire night without looking at your dance floor? No, of course not. You wouldn't do that. If you put on a record and your floor cleared, okay, maybe you'd finish out that record and move on, but you wouldn't play that record again at the same time in the same club. And the wonderful thing about streaming data is it is your dance floor. If you're not looking at the consumption data around your streaming, you're not keeping an eye on your dance floor. And if you've got 3 tracks on an EP, and you maybe think the first one is all hot shit, but it's the second one that gets the streaming, you need to pay attention to those metrics, adjust what you're doing, and realize that what your fans want is whatever you did on the second track. And that kind of feedback did not exist only 4 or 5 years ago, even. And I think that's a really exciting time, not just for your opportunity to make money, because in the grand scheme of things, if you're getting into this to make money, I really recommend you do something else. But in terms of your art and your communication with people, I would imagine most everybody here makes what they make because they want to communicate with people and they want people to hear that. And then if enough people love it, then you'll make money. But if you focus on communicating with people and their response to it, like if you have a Twitter feed and someone tweets at you, you don't ignore those people. If someone listens to the track that you didn't think would be a hit, Don't ignore that information. Respond to your listeners the same way you would your social media feed.
You guys, obviously Spotify has been mentioned multiple times. Jorge, a follow-up question for you about that. Spotify seems to be one of the leaders in the industry. Is it truly a great entry point for artists, and are Spotify playlists the way to be seen in the new music industry?
Well, I would say it's a necessary point. So many people are on the platform as a consumer. If you're not on there, you're almost just, in the Stone Age at this point. Getting on playlists is not an easy thing anymore because there's so many of them now. And even getting to know the players that really have a lot of the subscribers is not an easy thing. Of course, do your best to aspire to do it, but what you can really focus on is trying to drive people to follow you as an artist on Spotify, because if you get over 250, then you can have your profile look much more professional. You can have it verified with that little verified badge that everybody loves. But at the same time, then you can start maybe creating your own playlist that can really get a lot of attention and notice. And who knows, maybe one of those ends up popping off as well. So it is a great entry point, but is a necessary point. I think every artist that is wanting to even get into the industry and wanting people to consume their music needs to be on Spotify. I read a lot of press. A lot of the times, you see a lot of pessimism in terms of how, Spotify has raised a lot of money and they're not profitable. But this whole thing of streaming is going to take some time, and you have to support it. Otherwise, there's not going to be an easy way in the future for consuming to occur. That's my thoughts.
So Phil, returning to live, I want to ask you about best ways or practices for artists in negotiating higher pay with music venues. Any thoughts you have about that?
I think the most important thing really is just getting people out to the show. Once you're drawing, you have a lot more negotiating leverage. On the front side, you basically got to show what you're worth to be able to demand that or ask for that. And putting yourself even in a position of doing free shows and at least generating a crowd if you have the opportunity to do that, or get involved with anything just to be in front of people and start building that crowd. As you can get people out to shows regularly, you're going to be able to ask for more money, or at least a little bit of a guarantee with some points on the back end, depending on how everything kind of works out in the end. It doesn't seem like much to ask for $100 or a couple $100 even the first time in, but at least in my scenario with a lot of the places I book stuff, we're responsible for everything. So we're paying the sound guy, we're paying for all the promotion and everything leading up to it, and all of the expenses with it. So all those things have to be covered with a door in addition to what the artist is being guaranteed. So if you have 3 bands, each band's guaranteed $100. Your expenses are easily $500 to more at that point. And if 25 people show up on a $10 ticket, you're barely covering half the expenses. So I think just being able to generate a crowd regularly and have that kind of regular fan base that you're going to be able to pull X amount of people puts you in a spot to be able to ask for a little bit more money.
Well, and you mentioned some of the other things then that go along with that. So my follow-up question for you then is, once you do get a gig, what are the best practices in terms of what comes next? Marketing assets, logistics for that day?
The easiest way is, especially if you're on a tour, you have multiple shows, connecting, kind of building a platform that's, the art's all similar. We always make posters for our own shows, but a lot of times there is some kind of tour poster or tour art. And I think that the unison of that, especially if it ties into an album release or album art, just helps kind of tie it all together, and it makes it more recognizable. It makes your brand more recognizable, and I think just helps push it a little bit more.
Sure. Matt, what are some of the ways that remixes can help increase your reach, and why are these vital in the music landscape?
Remixers are like nodes on social networks. In the music space, people who make a lot of remixes and share a lot of remixes have a tendency to be these super serving nodes, or tastemakers, if you will. It's like they have a tremendous volume of followers. And remixes, especially in the world of, well, I call it dance music. I don't call it EDM, but I'll say EDM now for short. In the world of EDM, you've got tracks like, Lean On by Major Lazer, where within 6 weeks of the track coming out, there are 10,000 unauthorized remixes online of the song. And at one level, that can be very helpful in terms of raising awareness that there's a new Major Lazer track. But those are competing products. If someone searches for Major Lazer on YouTube and they listen to a bootleg instead of the original, that means money does not go to the original people. And so the remixer behavior that's going on online isn't really healthy for anybody right now. And that's what we're trying to fix. I believe that the internet is a giant derivative works generating machine. A derivative work is when you take anyone else's intellectual property, even that your tribe hat, and if I put another bill on the back and put my logo on the back of it, I have a derivative work of your hat. And the internet is just pushing out 1 million derivative works every day. And the systems and technologies need to be put into place to make it so that people can create, because I think creating art, even out of other people's intellectual property, is a human right. And but finding a way in the ecosystem that can work so that the people who made the original work of art that you're trading on are paid for as well. At Metapop, where almost all of our members are EDM, house, trance, techno producers, the number one most requested thing they want to remix that we don't have yet is Justin Bieber. And the reason is people want to remix something that's much more famous than them. Is everyone familiar with just the phrase SEO, search engine optimization? Remixing a more famous person's track is SEO optimizing your music, because someone's way the hell more likely to be searching for Justin Bieber than for you. And that's why people do it. And it's important because it brings people joy, both the listeners and the creators. But it will become more significant as time moves forward, as companies like Metapop and my competitors, and I'm sure some company I haven't even heard of yet, threatens to kick my ass next month, can create a system where that works for everybody.
As you were talking, I was thinking about something that Jorge said also, and I kind of want to check these things against one another, because a little while ago, Jorge, you mentioned the importance of what you stream being your own original music, especially when the opportunities come along where somebody is shopping for something for a movie, for some other project where they need music. Do you find that that's opposed in any way to what Matt was just saying about derivative work being a human right and being an important way for people to be able to express themselves artistically? How would you juxtapose those against each other?
Well, I would say what's great about Metapop is that they're fixing a problem, and that they're taking care of the original rights holder that made that material, but also giving an opportunity for someone to do more than just put up a song for free for everyone to enjoy. I mean, there's now an opportunity for you to legally essentially remix something. Regardless, I think every artist that wants to do bootlegs and wants to go ahead and do fan remixes, they're gonna want to do original material anyway. And I think it's important for them to do so anyway, because at some point you just can't be known for remixes as an artist, in my opinion. So I think there's a great compliment, but if you're looking to just make songs and get them out there, you want to really focus on originality first and ensure that you have all the proper clearance of samples and so forth, not only because it's original and it's creative and it's yours, it's art, what you're doing, but you're not going to find yourself in the legal trouble, because if you have put something out that has a sample and you haven't gone through like a service like Matt's, then you're opening up the door for a lot of things to happen. And we've seen a tremendous amount of those things happening, and you have, I'm sure, from a Beatport perspective, and so forth.
That's the issue. I mean, what Jorge is saying is, for God's sakes, please don't go sign up for Symphonic and upload the Avicii album and say it's yours. That would be a disaster for everybody. And I'm not joking. People do that all day, every day. Upload other people's records and claim they're theirs to a variety of services. And someone will find you, and you will pay the price for that. And it doesn't even have to be, a big famous record. And just sampling or taking a giant loop. We just got through October, and everyone's system is clogged with Thriller bootlegs. And they don't call it Thriller, but you know what it is as soon as you hear it. And that's not the business Symphonic are in. That's not the business iTunes is in. And that will be detrimental to your career if you don't follow the rules.
I want to actually add on this too for a moment, because when there's new producers, what's great about streaming is that it's growing and it's exposing, music in different ways to different cultures and so forth. And it's inspiring new creators, which is tremendous. But what the new creators need to think about are the legalities of how to make music originally. Because you just, like Matt said, obviously you can't just sample anything, but this also goes for public domain material that you may think is public domain. Sampling like the moon landing and putting a video out with that is not legit, it's not legal, and it also lands you in trouble with YouTube.
There's no such thing as public domain in recorded audio. Yeah. It does not exist.
And when you get into, monetizing on YouTube, that creates a lot of problems, because you're essentially, even if you made something and you worked your butt off, but that's sample and you're sampling, let's use current events, a speech by Trump or something of that nature, and putting, your own remix of that, it's not your property that you're taking, even if you think it's something that might be out there for educational purposes. So it extends not only to music, but speeches from the 40s, whatever it may be. If you have some of that material in there, it's going to create a lot of problems. So that's why I continue to always stress originality.
Do you have any recommendations on how people become better informed about what they can and can't do?
Well, there's a lot of great resources online. I mean, one website that I absolutely frequent every day, multiple times a day, is musicbusinessworldwide.com. They not only give you a lot about what's going on in the industry, but just by you reading, there's some interesting editorials that can teach you a thing or two. On our blog, we try to do as many things as possible to educate the new creator. We do video content and things like that to educate. But you would be amazed to see what you could find by just typing in a question on Google. I mean, you will find interesting articles, but the one thing that I think people fail to realize is that they don't even just search or research or read. So always just ask people that are involved in the industry, research before you do anything, because if you really don't know, maybe you shouldn't be doing it. Yeah.
Sure. So I'm going to ask each panelist one more question here, but also think about any questions you may have, because we're going to do a Q&A here in just a moment. In the music industry recording arts program at St. Petersburg College, we have, we've got 3 subplans in our program. We have a production subplan, a composition subplan, and a performance subplan. So we have a diverse group of students. And everybody seems to have questions, regardless of which of those tracks that they're in, about, that they have some difficulty wrapping their head around the big picture of how, as an emerging artist, you grapple with this issue of, I've got to make my living via multiple streams of revenue. That's, what I'm saying? Like, it's an entrepreneurial thing. What advice do you have in general for somebody who's an emerging artist and they're looking at this scene and how to, they may not be focused in one area or another yet, and they're thinking in terms of, well, I need to generate revenue from a bunch of different streams in order to make myself whole. What advice do you have for them?
I mean, in this market at least, it's pretty hard for somebody with an original rock band to make a living at it. And I think a lot of musicians I know locally kind of have working bands that they do, beach gigs and play 4 45-minute sets or 5 45-minute sets. and get paid pretty well, and then have, you know, an original project kind of on the side. But as far as, I mean, I think Hip Abduction's maybe one of the better kind of local examples of a band that really has kind of grinded it out for the last 8 or 10 years and is just at a point to where I think they're getting close to probably making enough money individually to live now off of the one entity. And saying that, all of those guys have other gigs, whether they're teaching or, well, the ones I know all teach that are in there. I don't know what else some of them do, but whether it's school or actually like music lessons. There's a lot of musicians locally that do that, that teach music all day and then have their kind of original project and art that they do on the side. As far as, you know, really being able to make a lifestyle or pay all your bills from, you know, an original band is not an easy or that well known of a thing in this area. The artists that get to that point usually end up moving at some point. So you definitely have to diversify. I mean, you can obviously come up with different revenue streams within the band itself, whether it's merch or t-shirts or whatever you want to develop from that. But I think the main thing is to just be able to set goals and like continually just advance yourself and the business and art part of it kind of in unison moving forward, and just making sure that you know there's development on both fronts continually. You know, and everybody in the band is kind of has their own maybe business project or avenue on the side of the actual art itself.
Yeah, I mean, first off, this industry isn't easy, but I'm going to say a few things about this. I was born in the Dominican Republic, and I moved here, and I didn't know how to make any piece of music whatsoever. I started to really just enjoy what I was listening to. When I got into like my teenage years, I would go to the record store with my brother, pick out records for him to play and so forth, and I was really captivated by music, right? When you are captivated by it, you have that thought process of, oh my God, I have a dream, I want to make it, right? Well, I was fortunate enough to be able to play shows, release music, release records. Not all of them were great. I'm not going to be, I'll be honest about that. But it was a great joy that it brought to me. And that's where, for me, I had like the impulse of doing something bigger with the industry. I graduated high school, and after that I went to corporate America, and then I would just come home every day and say, man, I want to get my music out there. I started to see what was going on in the industry, so I researched, and that's one of the first pieces of advice that I can give anybody. Research, see what's out there, find out what you can do to get your music out there legitly, legally, and then start to see what's kind of coming next, right? So a lot of this is on you in terms of understanding what is going on in the industry, right? From there, I recommend always to be really, really humble and be super consistent. I know these are basic things that don't necessarily mean you're gonna make it in the industry, but these are important traits that you just don't ever wanna lose, because once you do start to make it, you don't wanna turn into an asshole, right? From there, really be consistent. You know, I mean, it's not gonna happen overnight. It's not gonna be easy to get booked on a show that Phil's doing. It's not gonna be easy for you to be known from one remix. You gotta continue to do it. This industry depends on you to be consistent, and it depends on you to feel passionate about it and want to create something unique and interesting. Don't imitate anybody, be yourself, create some art, and get it out there. And believe that you can do it. If you do, I can tell you right now, you can have a business that's throwing an event that's for free for all these awesome people here. So I'm super fortunate, super happy, super blessed to be here, to know people like Matt throughout the years. And all of that only happened through hard work. There's no venture capital that is in my story. It all just happened from hard ass work. So bust your ass and you can do something.
I don't see much need to follow that.
Oh, no way. And Matt is a pretty strong advocate. And no question is a dumb or bad question. So,
maybe say your name and what your question is.
All right.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Grant. I don't know if I know everybody here, but I'm a producer around here in Tampa. And my question goes out to Mr. Adell from Metapop. So my question to you is, I might have missed it when I got here, but I'm just curious about the, aspect of your business that generates revenue from remixes. It seems like if you use somebody's material, it still belongs to them. Like, how are you generating revenue for the artist that is doing so?
What we do is we act as a rights management system in between the remixer and the original rights holder. We collect all the revenue around the content. So as I'm sure many of you know, if you get 1 million plays on YouTube and the content's been claimed, managed properly, there's some revenue there. There's ad revenue coming from YouTube. There's nominal, really depressing ad revenue coming from SoundCloud. And we collect that revenue. We give most of that revenue back to the people who made the original song, and we split the rest with the remixer. And then some of the remixes we deal with, about 10% of them, are selected by the original rights holders to be further distributed to Spotify, Apple, Tidal, Beatport. In fact, we use Symphonic as our distribution outlet to push that stuff forward. So then we've been open since March. I think we have about 250 tracks that either are on their way or have been distributed to Spotify and Apple and all those places. We just launched the new Moby single with Moby last month. The moment the single came out, we were letting people make legal remixes. A bunch of those are getting moved up to the commercial services. Revenue gets generated, and we split a piece of that with the remixer. But it's not going to make you rich.
So essentially, the original artist is getting a good portion of the cut, so they're okay with it.
They get most of it, otherwise the
Of course.
system wouldn't work.
All right. Great. Thank you.
Great. Come on up.
Hey guys, my name's Brandon. I do a little bit of everything out here. It's kind of open to all of you guys, but like you were saying, what I like about a lot of remixes and like producers and stuff like that is when they can take an older track and kind of put their own spin on it. How do you guys go about taking like an older track or something really small and still getting that nostalgia feeling without like stepping on hardcore toes, or is there just no way around it?
well, I mean, that depends on the creator and the music itself. I think what you mean is you want to kind of honor the original, obviously, by not doing something that might not be great, right? Yeah. Really falls back on the production side, I would say. I think one other interesting thing, though, that you can do, particularly with older content, once it starts to be available in this format, you know, we're pushing heavily the stems format by Native Instruments. I think if more classic content starts to be available, at least on the live side, you can get really creative with your original music while you're playing the material, and that could be a very interesting thing. But I would say, obviously, you want to pay honor to the original, but it's tough to even answer that, to be honest, because I would have to hear the track probably to at least have a consumer opinion on it. You know?
So you would say as long as the sound quality is really high and it's not a terribly chopped up, like the vocals are all stupid sounding and I put the pitch down in a weird way, if it's auditorily acceptable, it's acceptable pretty much?
I think if people are playing it and liking it, then that's how you'll know it's acceptable.
But legally, that's cool.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I was going for.
It's really simple. If you want to make sure that you can't get in trouble for sampling someone else's record, learn to play the fucking guitar.
End of story.
You cannot use, there are a lot of myths out there. There is no amount of someone else's sound recording that you can use legally. You know, there's even a Public Enemy record about, you know, how much of the beat you can take, and as much as I love Flavor Flav and Chuck, it's not true. Yeah. There is zero amount of someone else's audio recording you can use. The bigger question is, are you going to get caught? And the answer to that is, if you want people to recognize the thing that you sampled, then you're going to get caught.
Probably.
The other issue, though, is if you just make something, put it up on YouTube and SoundCloud, sample someone else's record, in all likelihood, the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to take it down, and your work is going to be wasted. Do not sell something with an unauthorized sample. Hell will rain down on you. Sharing it for free, kind of the worst thing that can happen is it gets taken down, and almost by definition, if no one likes it, nothing will happen to you because no one will notice. And if it's really awesome, then you're going to get in trouble for it. There's no good. That's what we're trying to solve right now is figuring out a way to let people sample. Because if any of you wanted to sing "Blown in the Wind" by Bob Dylan without sampling it, just do a cover version. You could do that right now and upload it and legally, and the services would be responsible for paying Bob Dylan, the songwriter, and you would get paid as the performer. That does not work with remixing and sampling, and that's the thing we're trying to solve right now. I recommend to people, first and foremost, make that thing that's in your heart. Worst case scenario, you bring it to friends or you DJ it yourself at parties, and it'll make people feel good. So if you want to make something out of something, you have the right to remix. I got stickers in the back that say remixing is not a crime. Remixing is not illegal. Trying to make money from it, distributing it is what's illegal. Playing it in meat space is totally legal. So you could make whatever you want and bring it to the club and have a friend play it at a party. It's when you're making copies of that thing you made. And the internet it's only copies. When you upload, you're making a copy. You're not really pushing your copy out. So you got to be careful. But my advice to people is, fucking make that shit and worry about it later, and just be careful not to get sued.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Cody from Fort Myers. I had a question for you, Matt. You brought up covering. What if you're making a remix to a song with vocals and you are doing a cover for it? Do any of the legal stuff change?
Well, a cover is when you do a new performance of an existing song. A sample or a remix is when you take a piece of an existing audio recording. So for instance, I wanted to do White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane, famous hippie song from the 60s. We wanted to do remixes of it, and we couldn't get the record label to agree to let us do remixes of it. This is years ago at another company. So we hired a cover band to do a legal cover of it, and then we remixed that shit. So if you're doing a cover, you don't have that issue.
Okay, so what if I am making my own drums and everything? Everything's original, it's just the vocals are covered. That's okay?
You're singing, meaning someone new is singing that old song.
Correct.
That's just a cover song, dude. It's totally legal. There are blanket licenses in place. You don't even need to ask permission.
Oh, wow, that's good. That's
You just have to make sure that you follow the right rules to make sure that person who wrote that song gets paid properly.
Okay. But as soon as I sample a guitar riff,
That's correct.
damn it. Thank you.
But yes, my name is Joanna. I go by Lady Smooth Sax, but I actually have a symphonic question in regards to the promo mailers. I wanted to find out, do the promo mailers include a free copy of the song or a download of the song, or is there an option to provide them with just a sample and have a link or something to where they can download it, so you're not just giving away the music for free, but you're actually able to promote it and have them download it?
Sure. Actually, for those that may not know, our system has a capability for you to mail out your release for promotional use to a mailing list of your choice. So at the moment, you are able to send it out to one or two people if you wanted to. For them, if they want to listen to the entire thing, they could, but you have the option of only selecting a sample through that as well.
Okay, so there is an option.
Yeah, and we're going to be adding different features such as direct linking to Spotify and other providers as well. So if people want to use it strictly as sort of like a mailing list option, you can do that. traditional services, since I also come from like the dance background as well, promo mailers are pretty common that distribution companies also have now, because what a DJ and producer will do when they go ahead and distribute their release through a promo mailer is they're sending it out to a list of sort of influencers and tastemakers to generate feedback, so then that feedback can be given to somebody like us or our marketing department to take to a partner such as Beatport, iTunes, Apple, etc., so that we show them, hey, this release has the support of such people right here, so you should go ahead and consider it.
Is
So
it
that's-
advisable to send it to fans as well, or just to?
It's your choice. If you're
Okay.
looking to make a return on the investment, if you did have an investment, then I would not advise you to send it to fans,
Okay.
because obviously that will open up to piracy and so forth.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Lewis. I'm a DJ. You're just talking about sampling. I just know there's artists like Danger Mouse, the Melco Project, Girl Talk, or even Thomas Jack using Charlie Chaplin, the Dictator, the speech from that. So, like, what's the workaround for them? Or even, Danger Mouse doing the Gray album, or Richie Branson doing Star Wars with Notorious B.I.G.
Everyone you just mentioned got sued.
Correct, but they're, I'm saying their name. I'm
Right.
on stage.
Right.
I'm
I mean, Girl Talk stopped making those records because of lawsuits.
right.
Everything Girl Talk does is legal in a live venue and not legal to distribute on a recording.
Okay.
Danger Mouse's Gray album was really the last of the great national hits of bootlegs during the physical music era. The only workaround is to win the lottery, basically, and get famous enough fast enough that the people who own that original stuff decide to leave it be because they like it. And for all those guys you mentioned, I guarantee there's 100 other people whose family have been driven into bankruptcy for trying to be the next Girl Talk. I would never recommend going down that route in recordings. And I love those acts. If I were those kinds of acts now, I'd focus on delivering those experiences in a live environment, which is what most of those people have transitioned to.
Right. And then what? Like, do you know Richie Branson's Star Wars B.I.G. album?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Disney sues a lot of people.
They do.
But the flip side is Disney is also, there's a whole homemade version of the first Star Wars album called Star Wars the movie called Star Wars Director's Cut, that's nothing but like children sitting in a kitchen reading the script, and Disney left that up. So you never know what's going to work. It just depends if you're willing to take that risk.
And they might have left it up for now as well.
Right.
When Rogue One comes out, maybe
it's
it'll
a
be
tough
different.
one. The Charlie Chaplin sample is different because movies do move into the public domain. Recorded music does not.
Okay. So, right, but you said the speeches weren't.
Let me actually specify that
Okay.
too. So I'm referring mostly to what YouTube doesn't want you to do. So if you go ahead and you put a DJ mix using a sample of Charlie Chaplin or Martin Luther King's speech, this is something that they don't encourage you to do, because those speeches and all that is there for educational value, not for you to make money off of it necessarily. We've had clients in the past that have sampled things like the moon landing, Charlie Chaplin's Dictator. I've seen that one actually as well. What all that does is really piss YouTube off, so we don't encourage it. If you're going to go ahead and use something with it, it's not going to be your property. Someone else is going to claim it, and probably somebody's going to claim it illegally as well, because what happens is these companies that upload material to YouTube, that's so much and so different that they're assuming that everything that they're getting from any artist or record label is 100% original. And that's really part of the challenge. What we started to do is actually starting to scan the audio before we even get it up to YouTube. So we're matching it already against what YouTube has and other databases. So if we discover a song with the Charlie Chaplin and Martin Luther King speech, et cetera, we automatically halt distribution of it, period. Because it just creates a lot of issues.
I see. Thank you very much.
Go Cubs.
That's
Go
right.
Cubs.
Yo, what's going on? Afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Slim Figure. I'm an artist. I have a symphonic question. Okay. All right, I am an artist with Symphonic, and my product got where it needed to go. Thank you, by the way.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, and so my question for you is this: for artists who want to grow with Symphonic, what are you guys doing in regards to going further with online marketing? The distribution is good, but just in regards to marketing, and artists who really do want to grow with the company and get their name out there.
Good question. And the panel after this, by the way, after we're done, there'll be a little brief break, but then the next panel is going to talk a lot about marketing and social media, which I want everybody to stick around, obviously, for that. What we really do is we try to create a story around you as an artist, and we really pitch it to the Spotifys, the iTunes, the Apple Musics of the world to try to get you noticed. However, it's difficult to do that if potentially, and I'm not saying you, but in general, if you don't have adequate branding, adequate promotion, if you don't have a web portal that actually works, because I've seen that a lot, it's very difficult for us to vouch for an artist in that regard. In the same sense, you are also one artist out of potentially 15, 20,000 that want the same thing. And we as a company, we do the best we can, obviously, to promote everyone, but we treat everyone as fair and equal as possible. So aside of that, though, we have PR partnerships that we can turn you on to. So if there's things that are beyond our scope, we can turn you on to those. So that way they can help you out creating a release plan that can go to market, et cetera. But really, we start to help you more on the developmental side. So we'll create a marketing plan to help you understand what you can do before you even release and after the release, et cetera. So it's not easy from saying, hey, promote me. We don't have just a service that'll say, hey, we're going to get you out there in front of millions of people like that. And any company and any individual that is ever out there promising you that they're going to promote you, they're lying. It's not true. No one can promise that. No one can guarantee that. It's not, no one controls that. It's going to start with your music, your branding, and the consistency, and then obviously communicating with us as much as you'd like to work together on it. So.
Good stuff. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, man. Thanks for coming out, too.
What's up, guys? Rob. I've got a little bit more open-ended question for all of you. Given the current climate of the music industry, where it's now production equipment is more accessible than it's ever been, and now you can pay $10 for a library that hosts a broad amount of plugins instead of paying $500 up front. How do you think distribution companies such as Symphonic and the music industry itself is going to kind of sort out the relevant material that's out there from basically, marketplace that is overflooded and becoming more crowded every day?
When I first started working in house music, it was a really, really big week if 100 records came out in a week. When I left Beatport, 27,000 records came out every week. Now, as the barriers to entry get lower and lower, the ratio of crap is higher and higher. It makes sense, right? Yeah. It used to be you had to at least get 3 friends to listen to you and get a bar down the street to book you before anyone could hear you.
Sweet. Me and my friends are good.
But I believe on the internet, people do it. It's not the job, I think, of gatekeepers like us to decide what's good anymore, because it's all available online, and I believe very much in the fans figuring out what's good, because what I think is crap, you might think is awesome, and vice versa, and that's fine.
Sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey there. My name's Jason. I actually work at Symphonic, new hire there, and I had a question for Metapop that came up in regards to how you had mentioned, you act as the rights management person to find to pay the royalties out to the original rights holder. And the question that came up, I was going to ask you after, but it seemed like it'd be pretty pertinent information, which was, can you do that for absolutely anybody ever, or is it only people you already have an agreement with, or necessarily how does that work?
We only do it for people we have an agreement with.
Oh, okay.
One, because we can't chase everything in the world, so we
Exactly.
we focus on trying to generate revenue for our partners. but also we're an internet business that's about scale. So if one person comes to me and says, "Can you help me clear, this Adell remix?" No, I can't, because we don't make phone calls. We make technology that tries to pull all that together. So we only do it for rights holders who've signed up.
Perfect.
Thanks for the question.
Thanks, Jason.
So please, let's have a round of applause. Let's thank our panelists.
And thank you to Patrick as well.